Okay, folks, here it is. The first of my promised reminiscences, which is a good word, reminiscence. Look it up. Uh, this story isn't actually going to be about me. It's about my mother. It's my famous favorite story about my mother. Um, some people who bother to watch this might have heard it because I've told it before. In fact, I first told it at her funeral. And first, though, for those of you who didn't know her, and for that I'm sorry, but I have to give you some background so you can truly appreciate. Oh, by the way, if you see this kind of stuff too, I'm sorry. If I'm going to keep doing this, I'm going to have to come up with some kind of a stand or something to put this on to hold it steady. But anyway, my mother, born in 1923 in central Pennsylvania coal mining area, coal mining country, that's what I wanted to say. So, not the most sophisticated area to grow up in, especially for someone who was the daughter of an immigrant coal miner married to a first generation American. My mother's father barely spoke English, from what I've heard. I've never met any of my grandparents. And my mother was one of 14 kids. And when my mother graduated the 8th grade, they made her quit school so she could start earning money to help with the family. And apparently she begged her father to let her go to school. She loved to learn, but nope, she had to get out there. In fact, if I have it right, of the 14 kids, the first one to graduate from high school was the third youngest. And the only reason she ended up finishing school all the way is because at the time my mother was up in Connecticut and she had her sister come up there to finish school. The youngest two, I believe, just finished school here when Osceola had their own high school. Anyway, back to mom. Born in 23 to this immigrant coal mining family, conservative Catholics. And the point I'm trying to make is you wouldn't necessarily consider them to be very sophisticated people. So let's come forward about 70 to 80 years. And at the time, my mother and I both lived here in this apartment that I'm in now. And one night, I'm sitting here, the phone rings, and I thought to myself, hey, the phone is ringing, maybe I should answer it. So I did. And the person on the other end of the line was my nephew, Andrew, calling from California. And we talked for a little bit about nothingness. And then he got to the point. He said, Uncle Dan, I want to tell you something. He said, and so far, besides my mom, you're the first one I'm telling. Okay. He said, I'm gay. And I said, no, you're not. He said, what do you mean? I said, Andrew, I've known you all your life. You're not that good looking, and you're a lousy dresser. No way you're gay. So then we talked a bit about his gayness, and I don't know how he was going to have to learn more about show tunes and flower arranging and stuff. But after a bit, then he said, I just don't understand. I don't know how to tell Grammy. Now, I may not be the smartest man in the world, despite what you all think, but I didn't just fall off the Uncle Truck the other day. I knew what that meant. That meant, hey, could you tell Grammy for me? So I said I'd take care of it. The next morning, when I was getting ready to head off to my laborious job at the library, I was out in the kitchen. I said to my mother, I said, so you know Andrew called last night? She said, oh yeah, really? What's going on with him? And and I'm trying to think, how am I going to explain this to her? I said, well, his roommate, Paul, he's not really just his roommate. And she said, so what? Did he decide to become gay? And I laughed inside a little bit and figured, well, not the way I would put it, but yeah, I guess so. And so I said to her, yeah. And she said, I figured. And that was the end of the conversation. It didn't come up again. And a while later, Andy and Paul came to visit. And when they got here, my mother treated her grandson the way she always did. And she treated Paul like anybody else that walked into her house. She assigned him chores to do. And the two of them sat and talked about The Young and the Restless and what Victor was up to now and all that stuff. And it was just no big deal. And so the whole point of this story, the reason I like to tell it is, and I have to give my mother's background in this and her age and all that for people to appreciate it, because I always think to myself, especially when I'm thinking about people my age or younger, that if Mary Mucky, coming from where she did, could just accept people for who they were, no matter who they slept with, what color their skin was, how much money they made, none of that, then as far as these other people who have a problem with these things, what the fuck is wrong with you? You know? So that's pretty much the point of the story. And I will tell you there's a associated story that I'll tell. I won't add it onto this because I don't want to make these too long. But it's about her younger brother, Uncle Joe, which is a weird name to give to a kid, but he grew into it. And I'll save that one for another time. But it also, I always think of that story and this one to show how similar my mother and Uncle Joe looked at life. And before I sign off, I also, as I was talking, I thought of a little addendum to this story. As I said, I first told this at my mother's funeral. And after the funeral, this one lady, we'll call her, to use the tomb loosely, which probably fits in her case, she said to Andrew, sometimes known as Andy, but I don't want to keep saying his name. I'll let him stay anonymous. But she said to him, wow, your uncle really threw you under the bus. And he said, oh, no, he asked me first if he could tell that story. And he told me that, and I didn't think much of it. I kind of missed the implication until he told his mother about this idiot saying I threw him under the bus. And she was about ready to go punch her out because the saying I threw him under the bus was pretty much like saying it was something he should be ashamed of, that it had to be kept hidden. And that was the whole point of me telling the story, was it wasn't anything to keep hidden. My mother wasn't ashamed of him, at least not for that, maybe other things. Someday maybe we'll explain to him how daylight saving times work, but that's a whole nother story. But anyway, so yeah, that's like the thing. I don't know if I mentioned that this person, like I said, when I talk about people my age or younger, well, she's actually a couple years younger than my sister, Barb, who shall also remain anonymous. So that means she's probably like 8 years younger than me. So again, what is wrong with her? What is wrong with people like her? So I guess that should do it for this. I'm hoping to figure out how to send this straight up to YouTube. Wish me luck.